You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of GHS-TV's award-winning talk show Crosstalk. I'm your host, Scarlett Simpson. Each week in this time slot, we take a look at different issues, personalities, and events that affect you and our community. This week, we're looking at unique museums in the Memphis area. We'll visit the Metal Museum as well as the Children's Museum of Memphis. But first, I had the chance to learn about one of Memphis's hottest attractions, the Memphis Fire Museum, with Museum Director Shannon Perry. Ms. Perry, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, contrary to what many believe, the Fire Museum is actually not a historical museum. What is its purpose?
Our primary focus is on fire safety prevention and fire safety education, although we do also have sort of a dual purpose, which is to honor the fire service of Memphis Fire Department as well and the history of the Memphis Fire Department.
Well, how did the museum start?
The museum started in the early 1990s. The current fire director and a number of other fire department personnel and concerned citizens noticed that we certainly had a very high fire mortality rate in the city of Memphis. At the time, it was 2.5 times the national average. And so they wanted to address that in a big way. And in order to do that, they began a committee to develop a foundation to develop a museum here using the historic 1910 firehouse, which is the basis of the museum, as well as the new building next door. And that was designed to address those concerns of the citizens of Memphis and to be able to have fire safety be a primary focus of the museum.
Well, Ms. Perry, in doing research for this show, we came across something that we didn't realize. This museum holds one of the largest collections of fire-related artifacts and artwork in the world. Can you talk about that?
Well, we have been very fortunate. We have an enormous number of artifacts that came from the Memphis Fire Department. They were saving many of those artifacts in storage facilities across the city for many years until the museum was developed, and they have graciously loaned them over to the museum, including a historic fire apparatus, horse-drawn vehicles, and then also additional helmets, everything you can imagine, badges, all sorts of fire history items. And then we've collected things from private collectors over the years. We've also had contemporary works of art that were done in honor of fire service that have either been donated or loaned to the museum. So we've been very fortunate to be able to display most of those items in the museum for our visitors to enjoy.
Well, there is so much that children can do here. Can you talk about some of your interactive exhibits?
That is something that we feel like is unique to our museum across the country compared to other fire museums in the United States. We do have a very interactive set of exhibits for kids, including they can drive an ambulance, or a fire truck. They can also go slide down a fire pole and go up in a snorkel where they can actually fight a fire in a burning building simulated. There's also a fire safety arcade with games, video games that they can play that test their knowledge on fire safety and prevention. And then we gather that data, and we're using that data to inform our outreach and fire prevention programs through the Memphis Fire Department and the museum. So lots to do here for kids.
Or there are free field trips that are offered to schools in Shelby County schools. Why do you think it's so important to stress fire safety within young kids?
Young children and our senior citizens are the two most at-risk groups for fire mortality and for fire incidents of loss of life, injury, anything related to fires. So that's why we stress so much the younger audiences, especially, and getting them to come in as part of free field trips through their schools. That allows us to reach the widest possible audience. And many of those children bring those messages home to their families and share those with their older brothers and sisters and their parents. And we have had documented incidents where there has been a fire incident in a home, and a child, from what they learned at this museum, was able to lead their family out or give their family advice on what's best to do in an emergency. So that is our primary focus, is to be able to provide that basis to save lives.
Ms. Perry, what is one thing that you stress the most?
I would say definitely anything that we can teach to our audiences about fire prevention, and that, because obviously that's going to be the best way to save lives, is to make sure we don't have fire incidents in the home. Smoke detectors obviously are not having working smoke detectors is a part of many fire incidents in the city that result in fire fatalities. So we definitely would like to stress working smoke detectors in your homes. We have a program that's run by the Memphis Fire Department that will provide free smoke detectors and installation to people's homes. So we encourage people, if you don't have one, please get one, please call us, and we will be happy to facilitate getting working smoke detectors.
While we established that this is not a history museum, there are exhibits that honor and highlight the Memphis Fire Department, which has been around since the 1830s. Can you talk about its interesting beginning?
Yes, as many larger cities have in fire departments, when they begin, they are volunteer. So initially we had volunteer firefighters in the city. Later into the 1840s, we finally were able to begin some formed, more official companies, although usually they were sponsored by insurance companies. That's usually how most fire departments kind of got their beginning. Eventually, we were able to have our first fire chief, who was actually paid by the city, but not all of the rest of the firefighters were able to be paid initially. And then gradually they were able to increase the amount of money that they were able to spend on the fire department and have paid firefighters and be able to develop what now is one of the finest fire departments in the country, which is the Memphis Division of Fire Services.
Well, there is one exhibit that you won't want to miss when you visit here, the Memorial Wall. Can you talk about who is that honoring?
It honors all firefighters who have lost their lives in the line of duty in the city of Memphis since the 1880s. And so every single name of every single person who has lost their life, including the most recent ones, is honored with a stone on the Memorial Wall.
Why do you think it's so important to honor those who died in the line of duty?
Well, they made the ultimate sacrifice protecting the citizens of Memphis, and we feel that it is so important to honor their life's work and to also show all of our current fire service personnel how much we appreciate everything that they do for us and the way that they protect citizens.
Well, Ms. Perry, what events do you hold here?
Well, we have many events that we do throughout the year, sometimes related to holidays. We were recently in the St. Patrick's Day Parade with one of our antique fire trucks. Actually, this year in October is our 20th anniversary for the museum, so we will be planning a number of events related to the 20th anniversary. Probably a block party, and maybe there will definitely be a 5K run that's going to be sponsored also by the local firefighters union that will be also in October. So look for lots of events coming up this year to celebrate our anniversary.
Ms. Perry, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have to take a short break, but you'll want to stay tuned. We'll continue our tour of unique museums in Memphis by taking a visit at the Metal Museum.
It's the one time of year when the bargains come to you. Germantown High School Television's Auction 2018, right here on GHS-TV.org. Bid on great items like theater tickets, restaurant gift certificates, artist prints, and much more. Online bidding begins April 14th, and be sure to tune into the live broadcast hosted by members of the community, alumni, and students. Saturday, April 28th from 2 to 5 p.m. on GHS-TV.org. All proceeds benefit GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student TV station. Bid online and don't miss your chance to win.
Hello and welcome to Cable Quiz. The academic.
Do you know how incredible it is to work at a TV station in high school?
GHS-TV is a student-run television station.
There's so many things you can do here at GHS-TV. You can be in front or behind the camera or both. You have that opportunity. There are no limits.
Where we have sports and we have news and we have entertainment. So the students here get a well-rounded view of what it's like to be in the TV field.
It's my life. It's what I want to do.
From all of us here at GHS-TV, thanks for starting your morning with us. For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Scarlett Simpson. The Metal Museum offers more than an art exhibit to the community. Here with me now is Grace Stewart, the Director of Art Exhibitions and Collections. Ms. Stewart, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the Metal Museum is the only museum in the country that offers specifically arts and crafts of metalwork. How did it start?
So the Metal Museum was actually founded in 1976 and opened to the public in 1979. And it was started by a group of artists, and in particular by an organization called NOMA. And so it was a miscellaneous and ornamental metal association. And so what they were finding was that the craft in America, they wanted a way to preserve it. And because there wasn't an institution of its kind that was dedicated to, specifically to metal artwork, that they wanted a way to have a home for it. And so what they decided was to start a museum as a place to celebrate that craft. And it originally started with a very small focus, looking very much at ornamental ironwork, and then it expanded pretty quickly to include all other metals, because there wasn't a home for it. And so the Metal Museum's history is a little unique in that it was really founded and grew because of the dedication and interest of the artists. A lot of museums start because they have a collection of work that it was either created or grew by a wealthy patron who really liked one kind of art or liked one kind of thing, and then they give that whole collection over and a museum grows out of that. But the Metal Museum didn't begin that way. The Metal Museum really began because of the dedication and commitment of artists. And so because of that, it has a very different feel, I think, than a lot of other institutions. Our founding director, James Wallace, who we called Wally, he actually was a blacksmith himself, and he came to start the museum. And when he came here, this is a historic site, and so it had been in disuse for a long time. And he actually camped out on the grounds during the winter with his family and was shoveling leaves out of buildings and rebuilding galleries by hand. So it really was the work of the blood, sweat, and tears of artists who really cared very deeply about what it was they were doing.
Well, this museum is not only unique because of its exhibits, but also because you have blacksmiths on the property practicing their craft. Has it always been this way?
So the smithy was built a little bit later than the museum. So the museum opened first, and then the blacksmith shop opened. And at first, it served two purposes, really. One was to help create revenue for the institution. The cost of building a museum, especially when you don't start out with a wealthy patron, can be very challenging. And so it was a way for our founding director to be able to take in commissions and produce work that would help financially support the museum. But the other thing is that when you're looking at the kinds of metalwork you can have on exhibition, a lot of the architectural ironwork that blacksmiths do is for clients, such as railings and gates and chandeliers that get installed into people's homes. And there's not a very good way to represent those in a gallery setting. We can't go to someone's house and yank down their stair railing and bring it and install it in the gallery for people to see and appreciate the object. So having the blacksmiths here working in the smithy, and then we also have casting artists in our foundry, is a way for the public and for visitors to see and appreciate that kind of artwork that they aren't necessarily always able to see in the galleries. So it's another way to kind of extend that experience.
Ms. Stewart, tell me some of the things that you offer to aspiring metalworkers.
So we have a lot of different things at the Metal Museum specifically for artists. So if you are an aspiring metal artist, we do have classes here at the museum. You can come and take classes in the smithy and the foundry. We also have classes on enameling and jewelry. So there's a lot of different types of metalwork you can come and learn. We also have conferences throughout the year. So we have a blacksmithing conference and a casting conference that happen every year where we bring in outside master artists. So for our Forging on the River is our blacksmithing conference that happens in the spring, and we always bring over an international artist. And part of that is because, especially with blacksmithing, a lot of American smiths were inspired by European smiths. Europe has a much longer tradition of blacksmithing that was really embedded into their culture in a way that didn't happen in the United States, because at the time you had a lot of industrialization that was happening here in this country, and so blacksmiths were dying out much more rapidly than they were in other places where there was a deeper cultural connection to that history. And so what was happening was that there weren't any blacksmiths, or there weren't very many blacksmiths that were doing kind of artistic, creative work in the United States. And so when the revival of the craft was really happening in the 60s and 70s, they started asking European smiths to come over to help teach them, and so they could learn from them. And so we are able to bring those artists over because a lot of young artists don't have an opportunity to travel to Europe to get that education. So we are trying to make it more accessible to artists here in the United States.
Now, how do you curate these exhibits?
So there's a couple different ways. Some of the exhibitions we take are traveling exhibitions. So we have a show up right now called Alchemy 4, and that's an exhibition that was curated by the Enamel Society. So someone else curated it, and then because it fits so closely with our mission, we're able to take this traveling show. So they send us this list of objects and images and information about the show, and we decide, yes, that makes sense. We'd like to take it, and then once it gets here, then we decide, where things go and how they're going to be organized in our space, how we're going to educate around those objects. But the objects themselves are already picked out. We then also have shows that are curated in-house. And so in that case, we will go about curating a couple different ways. If we're doing a solo exhibition, for example, we do a Master Metalsmith exhibition every year where we are doing a retrospective show where we're looking at the work of an artist throughout their lifetime. And so then we have this focus because it's the one artist's body of work. And that artist is usually very involved in the show as well. So we're having conversations with them, trying to identify the different bodies of their work over time, which pieces they feel are most important to their own personal journey, and then figuring out which pieces we have access to. A lot of times artists are selling pieces or their work is in collections of other museums, so we're contacting those museums, can we borrow things? Sometimes they're not available, they're already in another show, and so you're kind of curating around what's available and then putting together that body of work. Other times you're doing group shows, so we might have a theme. So we had an exhibition here that was called Metal in Motion. And so the theme of that exhibition was objects that are kinetic, that move, and that can be interacted with. And so then you're looking around this theme and saying, okay, what are the artists, who are the artists that are working in this style? What work fits into this theme? And so you can start with a theme and then search out for the artists and the work that would fit into it, or sometimes just in your general research, you were paying attention to what's being produced, what people are making, what the kind of themes are within the community, and you might say, oh, I'm starting to notice a lot of artists are making work that maybe is about like some idea. We had a show about guns and violence and justice around that, because we were seeing that there were multiple artists that were starting to talk about the same thing. And we said, okay, well, let's bring all of these artists together and see what does this work look like together? What kind of conversation does it have in relation to each other and to the other artists?
Well, Ms. Stewart, I apologize, that is all the time we have, but thank you so much for being on our show today.
Absolutely, thank you.
We have to take another short break, but when we come back, we'll embrace our inner child by exploring the sights and sounds of the Children's Museum of Memphis. Stay tuned.
One of the things that sets us apart from other schools or other productions that are doing this is that our kids are 100% in charge of what they're doing.
We sell the ads, we build the stage, we make the costumes.
Working in this environment, I've learned to appreciate everything that's given to me because not many high schools have programs like this.
When I first started in this program, my first musical was Hairspray. And now, 4 years later, I'm in my last musical, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and looking back, I think I've progressed a lot.
To see them now as seniors and to see the people that they have become, it's changed me more than I think it's changed them.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit GHS-Kappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm your host, Scarlett Simpson. The Children's Museum of Memphis offers kids creative and engaging ways to learn. Here with me now is Art Davis, the museum's Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Scarlett. Welcome to the Children's Museum.
Well, so many people have great memories of the Children's Museum. Why do you think that the founders were inspired to create a museum like this?
You know, it's interesting. The idea for the museum came from a flight magazine, as a matter of fact. One of the ladies from Memphis was flying and she saw a Children's Museum ad, and so she came home, she thought, you know, Memphis needs something like this. There's so much going on in the world today, and then children have so much that they have to deal with. We need to give them a safe place to go and to have fun. So she flew to the city where she had seen the ad and was inspired, came back, got with some more ladies here, and from that the dream came and has made the Children's Museum what it is today.
Now, the exhibits here are unlike any other. Can you talk about how they allow children to learn while just having fun?
Well, the thing that we always focus on is each child learns differently, so we want each exhibit to have the different characteristics that that child can relate to and learn that. So that requires a lot in the design and the implementation of the exhibit themselves. So there's things that some child that's leaning towards math will be appealed in that area. There may be another in science. So we just look at that and all of the different areas and all the Tennessee standards, and we come up with the ideas of the exhibits that we have.
Now, Mr. Davis, I remember coming here as a kid, and while some things are the same, there are a lot of upgrades and changes. Why do you think it's so important to keep changing your exhibits over time?
Well, I think the most important thing is the attention span of our guests. We've got to remember they're children, so they have a small and short attention span, so we want to always give them something new and something creative to look at and to make that imagination run wild, and to give them the opportunity to have their hands on a particular exhibit and learn from that.
Now, what are some of the most popular exhibits?
Well, again, I think that relates to the individual that's there. Our Going Places, which is sponsored by FedEx, is one of our best exhibits. I mean, where else can a child go and sit inside a cockpit and have the fun of and imagination of flying the plane? We also have a Kroger exhibit. So they're able to go in and actually check out their own groceries, and they're learning budgeting and they're learning costs and how to do that. We also have a bank. So there's a lot of different industries and a lot of different areas for children to come and learn, but I'd say the most popular are one of those three.
How did the ideas of the exhibits come about?
Well, the idea comes from a collaboration of a lot of people. It comes from educators, it comes from parents, it comes from the kids themselves. We look and we talk and we engage all of them, saying, what is it that you want this museum to be? Because we want it to be a place that's engaging for everyone. So we have everyone involved in the design and the ideas of our exhibits.
Now, the big news here is the Grand Carousel, which opened a few months ago. Can you talk about the history of the carousel before it found its home here?
Sure. The carousel is the Memphis Grand Carousel. It was actually hand-carved in 1909 in Philadelphia. It was originally designed and built for a city in Illinois. Unfortunately, that park caught on fire, and so there was some damage to the carousel. But it went back to Philadelphia to be recarved, and some of the horses to do that. And then in 1923, the city of Memphis had this great idea that we needed to have something that children could go to, that adults could go to, create memories and to get them out of the day-to-day routine. So it came back to Memphis in 1923. It was placed over here near the Liberty Bowl Stadium in what the area is now as Tiger Lane. And then it was moved when Liberty Land was established. It was moved about 60 feet and became one of the focal points. After that, it went into storage. And a few years later, we worked with the administration and were able to have the carousel move here for its final home and enjoyment of the people in the Mid-South.
Well, Mr. Davis, whose idea was it to renovate the carousel for the Children's Museum?
You know, I think it was a collaboration of many different people here. It was the current administration that we had here at the museum, our executive director, as well as the directors and managers here. But it was also an opportunity that the city saw in order to take this very valuable asset that they had and bring it back into life and bring it back to the citizens of Memphis. So it was a combination of those two.
Many schools here take their kids here for field trips to the museum. Why do you think this is such a popular destination?
Well, I think any time that you can change an academic environment for children, it helps the learning process, and that's exactly what we do here. So although the atmosphere and the environment may be different, it doesn't change the core goal of academics because they're still learning here. So this is just a great place for kids to come and find a new way of learning.
How is the Children's Museum different than other museums built for kids?
Well, I think ours is different because we concentrate all the time on what it is for the child to have unstructured play. Because play is fun, and that's part of our mission, and we want to be able to do that. And ours does not have, you know, a flow pattern to it. Ours is let the kids come, let them use their imagination, and let them make it their museum.
Why do you think both kids and parents like the museum?
One of the funniest things that I think about as I watch people leave the museum every day, it's who is more exhausted, the parents or the children. And I've often asked, who's going to rest more tonight? Is it going to be you or your child? And the answer is always, you know, I really don't know. And the reason for that is because not only do we make the museum accessible for children and for them to use their imaginations, but it's also built around engaging the parents. So, you know, parents oftentimes are really busy in their outside lives. So when they come here, they're able to give that one-on-one attention. And I think that that's why they come here, is because it gives them a chance to be isolated from the day-to-day routine and allows them all to have fun.
Well, now that summer is approaching, can the museum patrons expect the splash pad to reopen soon?
Absolutely. It opens May 26th, and weather permitting, of course, and it'll run through Labor Day, and we look forward to having everyone here. It's a great benefit for memberships, but it also allows people who are visiting and tourists and just residents to come and enjoy, again, the museum itself, but to also have fun outside and playing in the water.
Is there anything else that we can expect in the future from the Children's Museum?
You know, we're working currently on a master plan because we want to continue the core idea of the Children's Museum and where we're going to go. So we're working together to come with that, to figure out how we can continue that mission, how we can continue to be a focal point in Memphis and continue to be a destination point for tourists as they visit Memphis in the Mid-South. So yes, there will be something to come. What that is right now, I don't have the exact answer, but this I can say, there will be change, there will be excitement, and it will be engaging.
Well, Mr. Davis, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for visiting with us.
I would like to thank all of my guests for sharing with us these popular tourist and family destinations on this week's edition of Crosstalk. Be sure to visit them yourself. I'm Scarlett Simpson. From all of us here at GHS-TV, thank you for watching Crosstalk, and I hope to see you again.